Hey, I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Today I'm going to show you how to install a Tusk Stage 3 Upgrade Kit on your Polaris General 4 1000. The Tusk Stage 3 Upgrade Kit is the premium option out of the 3 kits. You're going to be getting some of the best-selling accessories to make your new machine stand out and look good and give you added protection and comfort while you're out on the trail. So what this kit includes is the folding glass windshield, your pivot folding mirrors with A-pillar mounts, the profile aluminum roof, a Polycarb rear window, and a cargo rack. Now all this stuff is pretty straightforward to install, so let me show you how. Now over at the machine, we need to prep the windshield mounts and the mirror mounts at the same time. To do that, we need to remove these 2 A-pillar mounting bolts in the bottom right here. There's 2 nuts on the back side. We're going to reuse those, but the easiest way to keep them in place is to shove a rag down behind this A-pillar, and it's just going to hold those nuts in place while we remove these bolts. And we are going to reuse the nuts. We're not going to reuse these bolts. So right here we have our windshield mount and our mirror mount. There's a right and left side for each bracket, so make sure you have them in the same orientation we have these. The windshield bracket's going to be on top. We'll install one of the new longer bolts with the washer on it through both of the brackets. We'll go through the A-pillar mount and into that nylock nut on the back side that our rag's holding in. Then we're going to tighten both of these bolts enough that we can still make some adjustments, but make sure it's not too loose. We're going to use a 17mm socket to do that. Then we'll do the same steps on the other side. Next, we're going to install the mirror. To do that, we just need to use a 13mm wrench to loosen up this bolt. When you remove it, pay attention to where that star washer is. And all we have to do is go through the back side of the mount with the bolt, install the star washer, and thread the bolt into the mirror. Now these mirrors do have a right and a left side, so just make sure that the logo is in the correct orientation. And then we're going to do the final tightening once we have all of our brackets adjusted. Then we'll do the same for the other side. So right here we have our roof. We need to get this ready before we install it on the machine. Now with this, we're working on the back section first, and to raise this up, you can use some of those foam blocks that came with the packaging for your roof. Now what we need to do with it is right on top, all the way across these holes in the front of this rear section, we're going to install the thinner foam tape all the way across there and then just cut it to length. Now we're going to take a pick and poke a hole through each of the mounting locations where a bolt's going to mount the front section to the rear. Next, we're going to set the front section on top of the rear section, and we're going to attach the two together using the M6 by 16mm button head bolts with the M6 flange nuts on the bottom side. Once you have all the hardware loosely installed, you can go ahead and tighten them down the rest of the way. Now over at the machine, we are working on a deluxe model, so that means it comes with additional features like some speakers and a GPS unit. We've got some cables hanging down. You can just ignore that stuff. For your standard models and this Tusk kit, the process we're going to show you is going to be exactly the same. Now before we set the roof into place, we need to prep the machine. So on the A-pillar on the passenger side, in this upper corner gusset, we've got a stock barrel nut that we need to remove. After that, we can install the supplied barrel nut that came in our kit in the same location. Then we can do the same thing for the other side. The next step is to apply this 1/4" foam tape, or the thicker foam tape of the two that come in the kit, to the perimeter of the top of your roll cage. Next, we need to prep the brackets that came with our kit. So we've got the thinner foam tape to do that, and we're gonna start with the outer mid brackets. There's 2 of them. So for these brackets, we're gonna apply 2 foam strips, 1 on each side of the slotted hole. Then for the mid inner brackets, again, there's 2 of them, and we're just gonna go on this outside edge. Now for the 6 remaining mounting brackets, we're just gonna put a foam strip on the tab right here. Next, we're at the upper section of the driver's side roll cage, right at that crossbar. You'll notice that there's 4 bolts sticking in to the inside of that roll cage. The 2 front bolts, we're gonna attach the outer mid bracket to that. We'll set it in place. We're not removing the existing nuts. We're leaving those in, and then we're taking 2 of the supplied nuts that came in our kit, and we're gonna loosely install those onto those bolts for now. And we can do the same thing for the passenger side. Next, we're going to install these roll cage clamps. So you'll notice this flat section, that's going to face towards the rear of the machine when we have this installed. We're going to use a 5mm Allen to take the clamp apart. We're going to use the rubber strip and install this around about 1 foot from the outside of the roll cage. And just so you guys know, we want to leave this loose enough that we can still move it around and make some adjustments to it. So on that flat section, we're going to use the 5mm Allen again. We're going to remove that bolt and washer. Then we can use that to attach the mid inner bracket. So with this bracket, the orientation is going to be so this hook comes around towards the front of the machine. And again, that's just left loose. We'll go do the same thing on the other side, and then we need to measure 20 inches from clamp to clamp, and that's going to be pretty close to where they need to be. With the brackets in place, you'll want to have a friend help you grab the roof and set it on top of the roll cage. With the roof in place, we've lined it up with the stock visor, and now we need to install all the hardware. And just keep in mind, as we install the hardware, we're just going to loosely install it and make our final adjustments before we tighten it down. So with that, we're going to start with hardware group A. That's going to be your M6 by 40mm bolt. We've already got our washer on it, and then we'll take one of these spacers. The spacer is going to go between the stock visor and the roof, and then we're just going down into that barrel nut that we installed on the machine. Moving on to hardware group B, that's going to be through these 2 front holes in the middle, and that's your M6 by 20mm bolt. We already have the flat washer installed onto it. Go through the roof, and then we've got the flange nut on the inside. For hardware group C, we've got the M6 by 25mm bolts. You got the washer that's going to go on top of the roof. We'll stick that through the top, then we're going to go through the brackets on these roll cage mounts, and then we've got the flange nut on the inside. And this is where we left everything loose so we can make our adjustments as we go. Then we'll do the same thing for the other roll cage bracket. Then hardware group C will also go through the outer mid brackets as well. Next we have hardware group D. That's going to go in the remaining mounting locations. So the threaded insert is going to be facing up, and then we have the foam tape we installed on these. That's going to go against the roll cage and complement that angle on there. So we're going to go from the inside with these, set that in place, and then we've got our M6 by 25 millimeter bolt and our flat washer that are going to go through the top. We're just using our 4 millimeter Allen to snug this up. With the hardware loosely installed, we can make our adjustments with the roof from side to side and front to back to get the best fitment, and then go through and tighten down all of the hardware. And to do that, we're going to use a 4 millimeter Allen. We've got a 10 millimeter combo wrench and a 15 millimeter socket. To prep the folding glass windshield, what we need to do, we've laid our blanket down, we've set the folding glass windshield face down, and then we need to install the bulb seal onto it. So we have several different sizes that we need to attach, but we're going to start with the sides and top. So that's going to be the longest piece of bulb seal, and the actual bulb, that's going to be facing up when you put this on. Now, as we install this, we're just pressing this on there. If there's any spots where it doesn't fit tight, you can simply pinch this together and it's going to give you a tighter fit. If you have any extra length on this bulb seal, you can simply cut it off with some side cutters. Now we need to install these shorter pieces of bulb seal. Now this is a 90-degree bulb seal, so you need to make sure that the seal is facing in towards the cab. And these are just going to go across the bottom on all of these shorter pieces. So we're going to start with this longer one. This goes right in the middle. And then the two medium pieces, these are going to go on the wing vents. Then the two shorter pieces on the outsides. Next, we need to assemble the vent brackets. So the first thing we need to do, we're going to start on the passenger side. And we already have two M6 by 16 millimeter bolts going through that hinge. We're just going to remove the nuts from the bottom. Then we're going to take that right nut plate. There's a right and left side, so how you know it's the correct one is if you stick this on the bottom, this bend, it should be going down and in towards the cab. And we're going to loosely install the nuts back onto those two bolts. Next, we have the hinge mount. So with this, the triangle side, that's going to be facing towards the outside of the machine. Set that on there. We've got two more M6 by 16 millimeter bolts They're going to come through the front of that vent door, through that bracket, and then we have the 2 nylock nuts that are going to go on the back side. And all of this hardware is going to be left loose until we have it all assembled. Then we can make some adjustments. Next, we have our hinge lever. So with this lever, if we start down at this pivot, that arc is going to face or go up towards the top, just like that. Again, we have an M6 by 16 millimeter bolt. We'll go through that hinge bracket, through the hinge lever, and install a nylock nut on the back side. After that, we have a hand knob that's going to go through the hinge lever. We'll install this friction washer on the back side and then go right into the nut plate with it. And now that we have everything loosely installed, what we want to do is get everything to where it's almost tight, make your final adjustments, make sure that the vent door opens and closes all the way, and then do the final tightening on all the hardware. And then with this pivot, you're going to go until you feel some resistance, and then you're going to back it off about 1/8 of a turn, just so it can pivot freely. Then once you finish this side, you want to repeat the steps for the other side. Next, we're going to install the windshield wiper. Now, the kit just comes with 1 wiper, and you can run it in 3 different positions. If you're just running 1, typically you'll run it right in the middle, but we are going to add another wiper later on. So we're actually going to install this on the driver's side for now. So we have these 3 plugs in the mounting locations. We're just going to pop this plug out first. And there's a couple little tabs on the back. If you can't push it out, you can use some pliers to help you do that. And then the mount is actually on the knob. So you're going to remove the smaller nut from the end. And then this is the mount itself. You'll remove one of these nuts, one of the washers and grommets. And then from the back side, we're going to install that through the frame of the windshield where we just removed that plug. Then we'll reinstall the grommet, washer, and the nut. And I'm actually going to snug these down right now. And I'm just going to use 2 17 millimeter wrenches to do that. They don't have to be crazy tight. We're just putting a little tension on those grommets. The next step is to attach the wiper to the wiper arm. So we need to press on the 2 tabs on the wiper, open that up. We're going to take the wiper arm, and this is just going to hook right onto the wiper, and then you can press the cover down. So once you've done that, you have your knob. You're going to go through the back side, and just pay attention. So with the knob where it angles down, I'm going to try to line that up with the wiper arm. And what we need to do when we install this, there's splines in this wiper arm that line up with that knob handle. So we've lined up our splines. We'll install this smaller nut. We're going to use a 10 millimeter socket to tighten it down. I'm just going to snug that up and press the plastic cover down. Then I'm just going to set that out of the way for now. And we're ready to move over to the machine. Next, we need to prep our upper brackets. So to do that, you're going to see 2 dimples on each side of the stock visor on the front. So those dimples, we already drilled them out using our 3/8 inch drill bit. but you're just going to drill straight through there. If it's easier for you, you can drill through the backside, but the dimples are going to be on the front. Now to get the upper mounting brackets installed, we're going to take the M8 by 20 millimeter bolts with one of the flat washers. We're going to come through the front of the stock visor in both mounting locations, and then you're going to take this mounting bracket, stick it on the back side, or we're going to install the flange nuts on the back. Next we have a spacer that's going to go on the front side of the bracket. We're going to use an M8 by 16 millimeter button head bolt from the back side to hold that in place. And just like the other mounts, all of this stuff is going to be left loose until the final steps. So we can go ahead and do the same steps on the other side. Next, we can set the windshield into place. Once you've done that, you can take the 4 M8 by 16 millimeter button head bolts. You're going to go through the front of the windshield, through the mounting bracket, and install the flange nut on the back side. Next, we have the knobs that are going to go into the spacers on our upper mounting brackets. To get these ready, you just need to install a washer, and then you also have a rubber grommet that's going to go on there, and then loosely screw these into those spacers. Now with all this hardware loose, you should be able to adjust the windshield from side to side until it's even, and then you want to get the best optimal fit up and down. So basically what you're looking for up and down, you want there to be a good seal across the bottom of the windshield. Once you have your desired fit, you want to start by tightening the A-pillar bolts. Then we're going to tighten both of the bolts on the lower mounting brackets, and then we'll tighten the hardware on the upper mounting brackets. Once you've done all that, you can go ahead and make your final adjustments to the mirrors and tighten them down. The next step is to install our standoff brackets. So there's a right and left hand bracket, but when it's on the machine, it should look just like this with the rubber pad facing towards the rear of the machine. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to take the hand knob that was in the top of the windshield, and I'm actually going to go through the back side of this corner and mount the standoff bracket to the windshield. I'm going to gently set that down and do the same thing on the other side. Next, we're going to fold the windshield down, and we're going to be careful not to scratch the hood with these brackets. And once they're resting in the correct spots, we're going to take a Sharpie and we're going to mark the 3 holes, 2 on the side and 1 on top for each bracket. From here, you can move the windshield back out of the way. And then what you want to do is drill the 3 holes that you just marked. As you can see, we've already done ours, but you're going to be using a 3/8 inch drill bit to do that. That hole is going to be a little bit bigger than the bolt, and that way you have some adjustability. Once the holes are drilled out, you're going to want to set the windshield back down with the standoff brackets. After that, we're going to take 2 of the M6 by 16 millimeter button head bolts. We've got the nut plate that's going to go on the inside. Just keep in mind, when you install the nut plate, you've got an angle at the top, and that's going to go right along the angle of the hood. We're going to use a 4 millimeter Allen to loosely screw those button head bolts into the nut plate. Once they're loosely installed, you want to take the remaining button head bolt, go through the top. Then you're going to have the M6 flat washer and the nylock nut on the back side. Then we'll go ahead and do the same steps on the other side. From here, we can make any final adjustments to the brackets and tighten the hardware down. And for these top mounting bolts, use a 10mm socket for the nut on the back side. To get the Polycarb rear window and the filler panel ready, we need to apply some foam tape to these pieces. Now there's 2 rolls of foam tape. You've got the thin stuff and the thicker stuff. The thicker stuff is going to go on the Polycarb rear window, thin stuff on the filler panel. Now with the filler panel, you have 2 bends. So we have those both facing up right now. And on one of these bends, you've got slots. So we're going to apply the foam tape to the opposite side as well as these 2 edges on the end. So we'll apply the thinner foam tape along the sides. We'll cut it to length. Now we need to flip the filler panel over. And again, we're going to use that thin foam tape across the bottom right here on this outside edge. Now for the rear window, we're going to remove the protective film, but before we do that, pay attention. We have this Tusk logo that is facing up right now. Now we can take the thicker foam tape. We're going to go all the way around the perimeter of this side that is facing up right now. Just keep in mind you want to stay about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, and you want to avoid from covering up these mounting holes. Now we can flip the window over and remove the adhesive backing from the outside. Now over at the machine, we need to remove both of the rear seats. Next, we're going to set the filler panel into place. We've got the 3 sides with the foam tape. That's going to seal against the back of this roll cage. And then the side with the 5 holes, that's going to be facing down. And before I set this into place, you'll notice there's 2 pre-drilled holes in these gussets. So the reason I mention that is we're going to install some of these self-tappers into each of those holes. We're just going to use a T40 Torx bit and our ratchet to tighten that down. And we're going to leave it loose enough we can make some adjustments. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. And then for the middle section, we have the filler panel bracket with the 2 threaded inserts that's going to go on the inside. And then again, 2 self-tappers are going to go to that. With all the hardware loosely installed, you want to adjust the filler panel for optimal fitment. So I'm going to press down on it to make sure we have a good seal across the bottom. And we'll go ahead and tighten the bolts in the corners first and then the middle. The next step, we need to stuff a rag between the filler panel and the cargo bed, and that way once we rivet the inside of this filler panel, the cargo bed won't hit the panel when we open and close it. Now we can take the supplied 21/64 inch drill bit and we're going to drill out this middle hole. Once you've done that, you want to install one of these push rivets, and to get this to go all the way in, you're going to have to press down so the metal surface is flush with the plastic. Then we can do those same steps for the remaining 4 holes across the bottom of the filler panel. Next, we can set the rear window into place, and we've got the same thing going on here. We've got the self tappers in the upper corners on both sides, so I'm going to loosely install those first, and then we can install the remaining brackets. Now for these self tappers, if you're having trouble getting these started, you can either run the self tapper through first and create the threads, or have somebody hold the rear window in place while you do that. Next, we need to install the brackets onto the rear window. So the three wider ones, they're going to go across the bottom. Again, we've got these self tappers. They're going to go right in there. Then we're going to finish with the narrow bracket on top. Now that we have everything loosely installed, we're going to adjust this from top to bottom and side to side to get the best adjustment on it. And then we're going to lightly tighten down the hardware. If you go too tight, you're going to damage the rear window. So don't do that. Just lightly snug these down. After that, we can reinstall the seats. Next, we have the bed-mounted cargo rack. So we need to do some pre-assembly before we set this on the machine. First thing we're going to do is attach the sides. So this taller end in the front, that's going to be towards the front of the machine. And then for the sides, we actually have a taper right here, and that's going to go towards the back of the machine. So that's going to go back, and then the bracket is going to have that L shape. The L is going to face away from this rack. Then we're going to take 6 of these M8 by 20 millimeter bolts, and we're going to loosely install these in the 3 mounting locations. And we'll do the same thing on the right side. Now we need to attach the right and left support gussets. These are different from side to side. So how you tell you have the correct orientation is you'll have the 3 dots towards the top, and then the bottom mounting location, that's going to be slightly more forward than the top mounting location. And again, we're going to use the M8 by 20 millimeter bolts and loosely install those. Now we're going to flip the rack upside down. Now we're going to attach our 4 spacers in each of the 4 corners in those mounting locations. So we're going to take one of these longer bolts, install one of these smaller washers onto it, go through the side, install the spacer. You've got one more washer, and then you've got a nylock nut. We can go ahead and tighten these down as we put them on. With the rack prepped, we're ready to go over to the machine. Next, we'll bring the cargo rack over to the machine, and those plastic spacers, we're going to make sure that all 4 of them go into the end slots on the sides of the cargo bed. After that, you're going to want to tip the cargo bed back. Then we need to remove both plastic panels on each side of the cargo bed. So some of these, they're going to have this quick clip. You just twist it, pull that out. But on other machines, you might have a screw going in there that's going to take a T40 Torx bit. So once you have that removed, you can pull out on the side of the plastic and get that out of the way. To attach the cargo rack to the bed, we need to install this fender washer and nylock nut onto the end of this bolt going all the way through our plastic spacer That's going to be in all 4 corners. And this is kind of hard to see, but in the back mounting locations, you're going to go through this slot. We're just going to install them by hand for now. Once you've done those same steps for all 4 mounting locations, you can take your 9/16 inch combo wrench and a 1/4 inch drive 9/16 inch socket and tighten that nut down. And I do want to mention, when you tighten this hardware down, you don't want to over tighten it. With all the hardware tight, we can go ahead and reinstall the side panels. After that, you want to close the cargo bed, and the final step is to remove the button head bolts that we previously installed one by one. And what we're going to do when we take them out is apply some of the supplied Loctite to them and then do the final tightening. And that's how you install the Tusk Stage 3 Upgrade Kit on your Polaris General 1000. If you have any questions about the process, leave those down in the comments below. And if you need to pick one of these kits up, they're available on our website. It's going to qualify for free shipping. So check that out and subscribe to our channel for more helpful content. I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Thanks for watching.